So let's kick off with our first question from Simon Weaver, who asks, what are the other 4 pro-Palestine independent MPs that aren't called Jeremy or Zarah actually doing with their time in Parliament? I've not heard a peep. Last I heard, they were going to loosely call Corbyn their leader. Does that continue to the new Zarah co-led party? So a bit of context here. They call themselves the Independent Alliance Parliamentary Group with Jeremy Corbyn. They're Shokat Adam, Adnan Hussein, Ayub Khan and Iqbal Mohammed. And actually, they caused quite a stir at the general election because 3 of them actually defeated incumbent Labour MPs, including Jonathan Ashworth in Leicester. And he was going to be sort of part of the front bench, wasn't he? He was Shadow Paymaster General. So they did cause a stir. They came in on this wave of anger at Labour's position on Gaza. And they sort of represent this growing disaffection with Labour among the population, in particularly high Muslim population seats. So they're interesting from a political perspective. But what our questioner is asking is what have they actually done with their time in Parliament so far? Megan, you've been writing about the prospect of this new left-wing party. How do they feature in that?
Yeah, so I think they're already part of an alliance with Jeremy Corbyn, so some sort of like informal grouping. But it's not really clear how they'll fit into this new left-wing party because, to be honest, nothing's really very clear about this new left-wing party. So, yeah, I think they've mostly spent their time kind of, they were sort of involved in this welfare rebellion, and I think, holding the government to account on things. I think they're clearly sort of grouping not only with Corbyn but with other parties, the Green Party as well. But yeah, I think this question from the listener is quite a good one because, I mean, as someone who covers this quite closely, I'm not 100% sure what they've been up to. So, yeah, that's maybe a hole in my reporting. But I think it'll be really interesting with this new left-wing party, particularly because even within that independent alliance, there are varying views. I mean, I don't think Corbyn would agree with everything that those 4 other candidates have said or sort of their positions on things. But yeah, I think that Gaza is very much, and I wrote about this at the weekend, very much sort of a congregating issue. It definitely brings a lot of the left together, but it's how much, you can see it so many times with single issue parties. The SNP, for example, it's often difficult to maintain an alliance if it's based around just one issue, because if you agree on one issue, you might not agree on all of the other important things, so... Yeah, you saw George Galloway come out and say that he couldn't possibly join this prospective new left party because of its position on trans rights. And gender, Yeah, exactly. And I think some of these independent alliance MPs are more conservative on social issues, whereas Zarah Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn have always been very, liberal, very sort of to the left on that. And I think a few of the other candidates who you could see coming over, I mean, I don't want to name names specifically, but people like Clive Lewis or Nadia Whittome, I don't necessarily think that they will go over, but they would be people that you could maybe speculate would. Their views are very on cultural issues are sort of more to the left of definitely of George Galloway. But yeah, it's interesting. It's classic the left not being able to, I was getting texts saying they can't even organise a piss up in a brewery. Sorry, am I allowed to
You absolutely are allowed to say that, yeah.
Which I don't necessarily think is fair.
You think they could organise a piss up in a brewery?
I think they could, but I think this was the wrong time. I think the timing was important here. But I can see why Zarah Sultana came out with that statement, because we've all been waiting for ages. I've been hearing rumours of this for months. So I think that, Corbyn sort of needed to pull his finger out. Maybe she jumped the gun, or is certainly seen to have done that, but something needed to happen.
There's an amazing detail in your piece that they had this meeting over Zoom, and it was sort of informally decided by an informal vote, which lots of people didn't vote in, that they would take the next step in thinking about the formation of maybe a panel to form a commission on whether they would have a new party. And she sent her statement about quitting the Labour Party. Obviously, she'd been suspended since last July, but she sent out her statement about quitting the Labour Party to co-lead the founding of this 20 minutes after the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I think
so you can imagine her like drafting it on her phone while she's on the Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't know, but you could see that maybe she had an idea before the meeting of doing this. But yeah, it definitely, I mean, my Thursday night was just spent texting and calling people saying, what's going on? And it's still not 100% clear what's actually going on. I mean, even to people that are involved, it isn't. But, at least it sort of put some fire up Jeremy Corbyn's bum to get going on something.
What a great image.
And
And there was a YouGov poll out on Wednesday, I think, that showed that 18% of people, not Labour voters, 18% of voters in general would consider, that's not to say would vote, but would consider supporting a new Corbyn-led left-wing movement, which given that when George first reported on it a couple of weeks ago, that was 10%, that really shows that like if they did get their act together, that's a big if, there would be an appetite for it.
Yeah. And I think what was interesting to me in that poll, and I've written about it for the NS this week as well, is that actually like within that, a lot of Green Party voters, a smaller number of Green Party voters than I had expected said they would vote for this Corbyn-led party. In fact, the Greens continue to hold on to a lot of their 2024 voters, even if a left-wing Corbyn alternative does come out, which to me speaks to sort of the power that whoever does win this leadership election can wield, because they've got the existing party infrastructure. People are already joining the Greens who were previously supportive of Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, I broke the story about Grace Blakely. James Medway, who writes for us as well, have said they are joining the Greens to vote for Zack. So I think it's interesting how, whether, we don't know whether Zack will win, but if he does, and even if Adrian and Ellie win, I think the Greens do wield some power over what form this left organisation takes, or even how the left organises. And what's even more interesting is that, it won't necessarily be the politicians that are the blockers to any organisation. It'll be the members, because I think there's still a lot of frustration with people that were involved in Corbyn's 2019 project, that the Greens were seen as, oh, well, of course you'll step aside for Labour because you're the junior party. And I think a lot of Green Party members and activists are sort of there like, well, you didn't win and you treated us really badly, so you're going to have to do a lot more to get us on side to, form this big coalition of the left that could end up doing some serious damage to Keir Starmer.
If we do see a situation where the Greens and this new independent group or left-wing party are trying to work together electorally to do some damage to Keir Starmer, we will see those splits come out nationally, won't we, on identity politics issues. I've seen it on the ground in by-elections before, when I've trailed behind George Galloway, who, is trying to aim at left-wing voters who are dismayed by Keir Starmer's leadership and, their anti-austerity and all of these things, but also at, some parts of the Muslim community who have more conservative views on cultural issues. And so you do have that strange mix of trying to get the sort of metropolitan liberals plus people who, are more sceptical of trans rights, for example. So we probably see some of those divides coming to the fore if this new coalition forms.
Yeah, I think the left-wing economically but conservative social cultural values is going to be really interesting if there is a sort of more formal party and those splits are going to become more apparent. In terms of the question of what it is that they've been doing, Iqbal Muhammad I noticed back in December because he was involved in a debate in Parliament about banning first cousin marriage, and he was speaking in favour of first cousin marriage, and he wasn't just supporting it in terms of, destigmatizing relationships and making sure that women who are in vulnerable situations get the support they need, which is a case you can make. He literally said that it could be a really positive thing and it could be financially beneficial for families if first cousins marry one another. And I don't know what Jeremy Corbyn would make of that. I don't know what a lot of the British left would make of that. I certainly don't know what they would make of that being, the one issue other than Gaza that this grouping has chosen to sort of
make headlines on.
On. And I imagine those conversations are probably like going on under the surface at the moment. But if they do form a new party and they're trying to kind of form a coherent platform on things other than just foreign policy, you're going to get a lot of that bubbling up to the surface.
Yeah, Megan, you're going to go with a lot more WhatsApp messages unread if you start asking those questions.
Yeah, I guess there are. I agree with you on the foreign policy thing, and I've already sort of said about Gaza, but I guess they are also sort of already organising around wealth taxes and the 2-child benefit cap. But I agree, those won't be as headline grabbing as the cousin marriage question because of the nature of the question.